history, an incredible subject, the one in which I earned my PhD.
I know,
was
and I thought of you.
thrown the trash can alongside English, which was my second favorite subject.
Mine's math.
My school.
I'm a math person.
That was brutal. Very tough morning.
Yeah. So, and Gabe in the control room was saying, "Yeah, Dr. Ryan, I'm with you 100%."
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. Amen.
Yeah. Let's take a poll. Somebody if you're listening, type in the comments: sports and math or history and English, one or the other.
Sports and math. Well, you can't put sports with those other
Why not?
three categories.
Okay, PE and math.
No, PE, you can't even do it.
It's a class.
It's all right.
You can get a degree in it.
Yeah.
It's just like history. You can get a degree in physical education.
Yeah. So it's all right. We don't have to go too far down this rabbit trail.
That's good. We don't want to end this in tears this morning. Please.
So, but let's start there. I mean, that's super interesting, though. Did you always, like when you were young, did you care about history?
I did. And I think kind of like you mentioned, you found the classes boring.
Yeah.
I do think instruction makes all the difference in what ignites your passion as a student. And I was fortunate. I had teachers that did that for me. I mean, I will admit I have a curious mind, but for sure, I still remember my high school English teachers and the stuff we learned. And I do think it comes down to instruction on some level. And I will say, I spent most of my career not doing the kind of work I do now. I spent it as a professor. And people often would say, I didn't think I liked history. And it might be that you haven't had history delivered to you in the ways that you imagine, or you haven't been able to see yourself in history, right? And so one of the neat things about college or just being an adult in general is you get to explore subject matters in ways that you kind of gel with.
But is there, when you have your doctorates in history.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like is there ever a part where it's like, oh wow, that happened so far away from me and so long ago that it's less interesting than something? For you as the historian, is there a scale of what is more interesting and less interesting?
Well, there's certainly, I think, more interest in 20th century history among kind of like your average American than, say, maybe the American Revolution or the Civil War. But, I think about history every single day, and it's because history is the genesis of where we are now, right? There's no way for me to understand the world without the context in which I live. And so, and for me, it's not a matter of how distant it is. It's like the interrelationship and why change happened and why the context of change happens. It helps you understand the world. It really does help you understand your place in the world.
Well, and it's so interesting because I think that there are things that we see in society, especially with younger adults, and they don't know how really. There's a perception that they don't really know how we got here to where we are.
Yeah.
So then they're missing that context.
Yeah.
There's so much information, especially on social media, that goes out there that has it's not the whole story.
It's very true.
There's no context to it. Yeah. And so, I totally understand that.
Yeah. I do think it leads to greater understanding in the world too. Through the study of history or even the study of the English language, you learn about multiple perspectives and the importance of really doing a deep dive to understand the world, to put things in context. A lot of what we do in college, in the liberal arts in particular, is just coming to an understanding of how to think critically and making it a rigorous part of the way you engage with the world.
Right. Yeah. So, do you think we're missing the thinking critically part? I know I'm like handing you, I'm lobbing you balls that are really easy for you to hit. But yeah.
I'm not a big, I'm not a big judger of the world. I kind of don't walk through the world, labeling and things. But I will share this. I think we lack the qualities of debate, discourse, and understanding difference that are really critical to part of a liberal arts paradigm. It's okay to disagree with someone. It's okay to have a different opinion,
Right.
so long as your opinion is rooted in the rigors of critical thinking, right? I mean,
right.
we don't have to all end up at the same conclusion. And I think, liberal arts really is critical to that, and having just that wide breadth of knowledge and learning about different people.
Right.
That's such a neat thing that this world offers, is the ability to learn about people who are different from you by reading a book,
Right.
or watching a movie or whatever.
Do you think that, because I went to a liberal arts school, Northwest Nazarene, and I enjoyed my education. Well, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. I absorbed it. I mean, that ability to think outside of myself and outside of my own experience, I discovered there. But it was so interesting. I had a physics professor, and he was more of a friend. I mean, physics was totally outside of my area of study.
Yeah.
But he did a course on problem solving, and that was really early on when it seemed like, looking back, that hadn't been identified as an element. I mean, problem solving has been around forever, and that was certainly a part of my upbringing with my father. He was very mechanical, and he had the ability to. I mean, if you grow up poor or ranching or whatever, you got to figure that out.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the question are those two different sides of the brain? Where your analysis. Where you're studying history or you're studying the details of a topic, how do you get to that point of actually applying that to a problem? I mean, maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that what happens in college, like your experience, is that you just it becomes second nature to the way you think. So you don't necessarily sit here and think, I'm taking in multiple perspectives currently.
Right.
But the truth is, if you want to truly problem solve in any way, getting to the best solution requires thinking about various ways to accomplish that task, that thought, that debate, that argument, and then finding what the best route there is, right? So, and of course, there are many ways to engage in that process, but I think it's about being deliberative.
Right. Well, and so I mean, when we critically look at, when you have the opportunity to kind of look back on where higher education has been and is, do we get people, or where are we at in the problems? I mean, the other day I heard something about project-based education, and so I kind of really, I had never heard that exactly that way, but it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
The actual application of what it is. I mean, if somebody they're studying to be a teacher, then into that is based, you're going to spend time in the classroom, you have a student teaching experience, or a medical professor or something like that. Are we missing some of that, or is that available in some of those other thinking things? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a question in there somewhere, and I'd like you to talk about that.
Yeah, I'll grab at it. And I think it relates back a little bit to what Kyle said in his dislike of writing research papers, right? That was actually applied learning, right? That was actually applied learning. That was you having to work through a topic, come to a conclusion, make a solution, and make an argument about it, right? Usually in something like that. But then there's other kinds of topics. And EOU is really good at this, doing community-based or service-based learning, doing projects that help you apply the skills you're learning in classrooms.
Right.
And this looks different depending on what. So taking history, for example, a group of historians that are history majors and history students at our school just helped Hot Lakes develop a greater understanding of their own history, and that helps them with marketing. And so in essence, they've applied history there. But there's other projects like, the work with the Rev, for example, our interns who are out in our community. All of that is applied, right? All of that is applied. It requires expanding your lens beyond just kind of work as work, like the work we're doing here today. There's no doubt in my mind that the research paper that Kyle wrote helps him be a better communicator today, even though he may not admit it.
Well, it was about sports. I mean, that was the good
Well,
thing.
of course it was. but you know, the point is, all of it does, you know, practice makes perfect, and all of this work, all of this development leads to an end goal. You know, speaking of history, you know, when you think about the history of higher education, which is how you started with your framing of your question, you know, it was started for two reasons. One is to help develop professionals, you know, largely in the ministry at Harvard. But second was also that transformative nature, you know, that does get into your soul, where you're doing the types of things where you're learning about topics you might not have otherwise encountered, right? And it just develops you as a human being for those who are interested and willing to do so. And, you know, those two things remain central to higher education today.
Awesome. Good.
And I agree with that. I mean, I appreciate and understand the importance of English and history. They just weren't my. It wasn't my thing. You know.
No,
what I mean?
I think back the papers that I wrote and the research that I did and the footnotes and the references and all of that. I would have never volunteered in my life to do that ever.
Of course you wouldn't.
You know, but
Of course you wouldn't.
But you're right. But I know how to do it now. I know the value of references. I know the value of research, and I'd have never learned that had I not gone through those experiences.
When you kind of think outside the box, like President Ryan was saying, like obviously that research paper has helped me, but I was just saying, like, I've never wrote a research paper since, you know what I mean? Like, I've never actually like had to sit down and hey, like my boss doesn't say, hey, give me an 11-page research paper cited about the Padres. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not like the actual like process of it doesn't.
Yeah, I would never ask you to do something that I would never.
The door's right there.
Like, I'm not going to read that.
And not to belabor the point, but I must, again, given this, I spent years doing
No,
this
dude,
my life,
yeah.
but still do it. But you know, I think one critical aspect of this too is part of being taken seriously by our peers in society is being able to converse well, right? And like, so if you have a problem like with your medical insurance, you're going to have to be able to write a pretty good letter that's going to be taken seriously. And you know, all of that stuff in our daily interactions matter. The way we present ourselves, and you know, that's what your English paper and your history knowledge does too.
Makes sense. What do you have to do? Like, what do you have to have or do to be called a historian?
Well, you know, you don't have to go the route I did. You know, some of the most famous historians, you know, Doris, McCullough, all these things, Doris Kearns, they don't have PhDs. They have a great many researchers who work for them who are probably budding PhDs. But I would say anyone who's in the field of history, you know, and that could be a museum worker.
Okay, you don't have to have like something published, or you don't have to have a degree. You can just be a historian.
Yeah. Now, I would say, you know, scholars of history, people like myself, we would kind of expect you to have a credential. I'm unlikely to like kind of engage with McCullough scholarship in something that I would debate historians with. But the truth is, I imagine most human beings don't care about my scholarly debates, but as much as I do. You know. I'm willing to give you that point.
I love this. So, well, let's talk about EOU.
Oh, my job.
Yeah, that job, that thing.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, but so much of what we're talking about is like super relevant to right here and right now. You know, and so what have you been up to this summer? Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, it has been a really, really busy summer, and I want to say a positive summer. I really feel like we're building great momentum off of last year's work to set EOU up for a brighter future. We had 4 strategy teams come together over the last year to really focus on 4 key areas at the university, making sure our students are successful, growing our enrollments and diversifying our enrollments, fiscal sustainability, and finally having a vibrant university life and atmosphere for our employees and the community. And the community came together and developed proposals from across the university, and they just did a really terrific job. And they've come up with great ideas that we're going to start putting into effect. In fact, we've already started the work of putting them into effect this year. And so we're really excited for the rollout of that, ways that we can really improve and serve our students and each other better.
Good. And you just came back from Taiwan, is that right?
Yeah.
And you said that's what you're recovering from still.
Yeah, well, I'm recovered now, but last week was a bit of a bear. So I went to Taiwan with the 3 other regional university presidents in Oregon, Southern, Western, and OIT, and we visited 3 universities and several other kind of professional areas as well as government offices in Taiwan to look at building relationships with them. Taiwan has really ambitious goals around bilingual learning and even being a bilingual nation, and Oregon wants to play a role in that. Representative Paul Evans on the west side is the one who initiated the trip for us, but it was just, it was a really good experience getting to see where we fit in their world. And now the work is, how do we cement these partnerships? We were able to sign a memorandum of understanding with Wenzhou Ursuline Language University while we're there. And now I'm meeting with the deans next week to kind of build up those relationships and make sure they keep going.
So this is your second fall, right?
Yeah.
So you've been here just a little over a year. Because did you come in the middle of the summer?
I came in July last year.
Okay, and and you've had the experience which we all need for that. You came from other schools, you had the experience, and you came to EOU. Now that you've been here a year, okay, so what have you adjusted your picture a little bit? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like, so I mean, I worked at studios previously, had a lot of experience in this kind of work and so on and so forth. And so it gave me a kind of a foundation on which to build this business. But there are times when I'll go to another studio or I'll go to another TV station and it'll be like, holy smokes, that's something that we can do, Are you having those experiences yet on an EOU level?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, we're always learning and growing as human beings, and certainly this transition has been one of enormous growth for me. I came here with some conceptions, and even my first few months I had some ideas, and now that I know the community better and spent the time listening, I think I do have different conceptions and ideas and kind of a more solid footing. There were a lot of similarities between Southern Indiana and Eastern Oregon. But there are very stark differences as well. And so I think, kind of getting a hold of those has been really important for me, and getting to know this area. Truth be told, when you're a new part of a community, everything is just difficult. In addition to that, I have a very big job, and, just learning the people, learning the histories and all that. It's very time consuming. Your question's well timed, Brent, because, just even on my drive here, I thought today, gosh, it's so nice to know where I'm going this time, from the last interview when we were together. So I think there's a kind of lower barrier in terms of my day-to-day interactions. There's still a lot to learn and grow and develop at EOU, of course. But yeah, it's been a very formative year for me.
So what is, I don't know, can you grab a hold of any of those things recently? I don't know, maybe in your trip in Taiwan is like, wow, that is something that we could, because sometimes you go someplace and there's low-hanging things that you could adopt easily, but you just haven't thought about doing. Is that you have any of those thoughts that have kind of come?
I think going back to the strategy teamwork that was accomplished, I think there was a lot of low-hanging fruit in our EOU policies and culture that it's time to revisit. And so now we can kind of do that work now that we have, a body politic on campus who's willing to do so. I think, addressing some of like our admissions policies, for example, making sure that we're as student-centered as possible. One of the new things that we're doing this year is making it a lot easier for students to get answers to questions. So what you'll see in the fall is something called the Mountaineer Information Center. So rather than students kind of going from office to office trying to figure out how do I get this answer about financial aid and also make an appointment with my advisor, they're going to be able to go into one spot and they're going to be able to do both those things to set themselves up better for success. I think, too, there's a lot to be said for learning about the community in which you reside. I've always been a community-focused leader, and one of the things that we did a lot last year was traveling around Oregon and finding out what the needs are in our various communities. And, of course, I'm going to keep that up. I have an upcoming trip to Burns and other places in Harney to learn more about their needs and activities. But I would say some of those relationships I've developed have been formative. Finding out that, our K-12 partners, they need more school counselors, they need speech pathologists. EOU wants to be a partner in that work. I didn't come here thinking speech pathology was the direction of EOU, but I learned it. I learned it through the relationship building and the honest conversations we were having with people.
Right, and I think that, I'll never forget when I was in college, and I figured out that the alumni really had more of a voice of what was going on than I did as a student.
Yeah.
And now I understand that. But it's the point is as a student, you kind of think, well, I'm the customer. I'm here. I've arrived. But actually, there's this whole institution, literally, that is running, and sometimes they forget about the student or they lose focus. And so that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we're excited for this year. It just feels like we're doing better. And I will say, having been here the year, one of the things I'm constantly hearing, I don't go out and talk to people and I hear, oh, EOU really messed me up. That's not what I'm hearing back. What I'm hearing back, and even as recently we were at the OTEC, day-long summit on Eastern Oregon yesterday, I met at least 10 people there who shared how fundamental EOU was to their development, and then others who didn't get their degrees there but worked there but had good experiences, and I think that's because relationships matter at EOU, and putting students first has always been our goal. The idea is let's take it even higher, let's do even more.
This is a challenging question, I know it is. How do you guide this module of EOU that sits in the middle of Eastern Oregon, and EOU has a culture, and it sits in the middle of a gigantic, overwhelming culture sometimes. Do you find that challenging a little bit to guide this thing that you're responsible with, but at the same time tip your hat to the surroundings because they're not always in agreement with each other?
Yeah. I do. I have a couple of ways of dealing with that. I do have a big job. There's just no way around it. Focusing on the community, making sure EOU is doing its best. Last night was definitely one of those nights, 2 to 4, not sleeping, making lists, trying to, that's the nature of the work, right? Yeah. I don't see the community and EOU out of sync, though. I very much so live, the way universities are run are through constant conversations between faculty, staff, administration, students, alumni. If you look at the course of any day on my calendar, it's community, it's students, it's faculty, it's staff, and it's working with my colleagues in the administration. And I have always been someone who is just undaunted. It's a strange part of my personality. A lot of people will tell you force of nature. I just really focus on things I can accomplish and set clear goals for myself. And doing that means bringing all the people together. My job is about bringing people together and serving them. And as long as I always have that as my North Star, I think we do well as an institution.
So how do you handle things that you can't change?
Well,
or that are really slow to change, yeah.
Yeah, that's something I learned a long time ago. You have to focus your life on the things you have influence and control over. Those things that you don't have control over don't serve you well to focus on. There are always going to be, certain things that I'm not going to have control over. But where I can use influence, I want to. I want to debate people. I want to share different ideas. I want to make sure that I'm sharing a set of facts that they may not have considered. And I want to make sure I'm listening to those other person's set of facts because, maybe there's something that I'm missing, right? And I think that's the challenge of life, right? We go through life and not everybody is always agreeable. And certainly as a leader, I'm a target for a lot of anger and dissent. But at the same time, you go through your day as a human being and you really do just focus on what you can do. Yeah.
Good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's kind of off, but it's all right. I like to know like stuff about people personally.
Okay.
Did you have that suit when you came to EOU, or did you buy it since you've been here?
I'll share with you first. It is not a suit. This is an outfit fully designed and developed by me, i.e. I matched the dress with the jacket.
Okay. But did you have it before you came?
Actually, this dress I purchased, I want to say about 5 years ago.
It's navy.
Yeah.
It's EOU colors. That's
I do love blue, so that's solid. I'm guessing this jacket is a post-purchase. I have had to purchase, I think, 2 navy blue jackets.
I like it just because of the color. But how do you decide what you're going to wear in the morning? Do you have a plan, or do you just wake up and say,
absolutely depends on the meetings that I have.
It does?
Yeah. Particularly in the summer, I might do a lot more internal meetings. And so I will dress according to the needs of the day. Today we have a really big day. I had to come and meet with y'all and teach you that history matters. and we're meeting the foundation. These are people who have given their time and energy and resources to the university, and I must respect that of them. Couple administrator meetings and then university updates this afternoon. So I need to look well.
This is the big day.
Yeah.
Dress and coat, because we can't call it a suit.
Yeah. This is a day where, but other days it is more casual. It's capris and a nice.
Man, I was thinking she did this for us.
No.
We won't know until the next time. I'll come in with a T-shirt and a baseball cap. And
I would be very
athletics.
impressed. Yeah,
Right.
if you had like on an EOU volleyball sweatshirt and a baseball hat, I would be like, oh, here we go. Now we can talk about some sports.
So let's look at the fall. How's that lining up, and what are you thinking?
It is looking good. But the aforementioned up for 2 hours last night, I want to make sure it looks good.
Yeah.
We are up right now in on-campus students, and that's, so critical for EOU and future generations of individuals in LeGrand, Union, and Eastern Oregon. We do need to produce more graduates in this region. And having young folks, because our on-campus population is very much so usually the younger generation, while our online students are usually upskilling and reskilling. It's just so important. I'm really excited to hopefully welcome back, should all trends stay where they are now, a larger class than we've had since at least 5 years. And so of on-campus students, that's just a real benefit to employers in this region, to anyone with a small business. We want to keep that trend going upward, but I'm nervously clinging to it and hopeful that the numbers hold.
Good. Now, when do students and faculty come back? What's their schedule?
Well, it's actually kind of a multi-phase, as because we're on terms, as Kyle mentioned, athletics is back, baby. Yeah. They're on campus. There's a lot of activity there. And then, in a lot of sense, there was so many summer camps on campus. There was so much activity in athletics. It's almost like they never turn the faucet off. We have, as many of you know, a really neat relationship with the islands, and in particular, Palau. We have a goodly number, 35, who just arrived from Palau. I want to say yesterday, who are off on a summer bridge to help acclimate to this new environment. So that group of students, I believe, maybe on campus today, if my calendar's right. And then our students will return the week before the first day of school, which is the 23rd, and faculty very much so in the same vein. We've got a lot of activities coming up. If you go to eou.edu, one of the really great innovations we did last year through VP Tim Seidel's team was having calendar events that really shows all the activities going on campus, and you can see we are ready to grow this year. I mean, it is. I went through it yesterday and just sort of giggled at what a magical transformation I've seen in just a year. I mean, so many events to really capture the hearts and minds of our students, and I encourage actually community members to take a look at it. I mean, there's always fun for everybody at EOU, and so we're doing a lot to try and capture those hearts and minds of our new students.
Good. Part of that's EOU Wow, Week of Welcome. I know a little bit about that because one of the girls that used to work next door was like one of the people that kind of, I don't know if it was volunteered or it was her job that like kind of ran it. And I have a EOU Wow t-shirt actually that she gave me.
I have several of those too. Yeah, WOW is our week of welcome, and that's for new students. And so they really do what they can to try and help them understand all the opportunities. Now, of course, we need our students to take that step of engaging, and that's something we lost over the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to get back that ability to engage and putting yourself out there. So we're doing our best to try and make sure that those opportunities are available, and we just hope the students take us up on it.
And that's in a time where it's hard for young people to engage as it is, and then you throw COVID on top of that, and it just like you said, that process is probably like high on the totem pole.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Now in Low Hall, you guys have been displaced, right, for a while, and where's that project at?
Yeah, so we have two exciting huge projects going on campus. So we have really prioritized our student services in getting back into INLO. Obviously, our whole focus as an institution is on students. So we're going to be able to get back all of our front-facing offices into INLO in September before the start of school. So we're really excited about that. The second deck of INLO is going to continue to be worked on, a lot of HVAC activity and things like that up there. But we'll get in there hopefully in December. And then we also have, of course, the Grand Staircase project, the rebuilding of a staircase that can connect EOU to the community. Obviously, the design has changed and been approved by the Historical Commission. But that too, I think, will have about a December date if all things go smoothly.
Well, good.
Yeah.
So, what are you kind of looking forward to? I mean, I'm glad to hear that you feel like things are more prepared. Things have progressed in the last year for you. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are some important marks out there that you guys are trying to hit?
Yeah, I think we're looking to continue that kind of forward progress and momentum while keeping the things that make EOU so great, right? EOU wants to remain a teaching-focused, student-friendly, really relationship-driven institution. We need to keep that. That's the heart and soul of Eastern Oregon. And we need to make sure we're continuing to serve all of our community partners. But we also need to make sure that we have a path towards excellence, right? We need to make sure that we're really thinking more and more about how we keep more of our students, how we graduate more of our students, and that more of our students are actually realizing their dreams and having their minds expanded with us. And so, kind of constantly assessing and growing around that is really, really important to us. I think too on campus, we're all looking forward to having, enjoyable relationships with each other and getting to know each other more and seeing us have a more appreciative culture, having a culture where people are saying good job, and asking questions and engaging with each other more. The pandemic just, and I know it's weird to talk about it so many years later, but it did have deleterious effects on society. And so, You know, really making sure that we're creating those bonds, you know, truly those bonds, faculty and students, staff and faculty, and everybody in the administration. You know, we really have to focus on that. And we have to be able to disagree too. Yeah.
That's hard for a lot of people.
It is. You know, it's interesting. I grew up in a family where, you know, we were okay disagreeing, but you're right. It's so difficult for other people, and I try and be mindful of that, but I get really irritated.
I always go back to and I'm not great at it, but I always go back to and my grandfather used to say this. He was a Marine. He was a warden in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and he always used to say, "Seek to understand before you seek to be understood."
That's right.
And if you do that, then you're more likely to not, you know, be okay with disagreement in my eyes.
Yeah, that's an incredible life lesson. I mean, honestly, one of the first things you learn when you start having training in conflict management is the importance of listening to understand rather than listening to respond.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a lost art.
It's hard.
I know. But imagine how boring life would be if I just came in here and agreed with everything you said.
Yeah.
Didn't give you heck about history and English,
It would be
right?
boring.
It makes it more fun to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
Well, and that leads to something I'm thinking about is that I've been in situations before where I've come in as the leader of an organization, and I really had ideas, but I didn't have all the answers, and I had to encourage, and even in our staff, I mean, I want pushback, I want a discussion.
Yeah.
Are people around you giving you that? Do you feel like?
Absolutely.
I mean, do you feel like that you're engaging in an actual conversation and you're able to disagree until you find consensus?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, university life is about disagreement and resolution, you know, just being frank, you know. The way, for example, I think these strategy teams are kind of a microcosm of what you just described, right? They had to deal with hundreds of ideas from the campus.
Right.
And I told them 3 to 5 big game-changing ideas.
Right.
That's what I want delivered to me. And so they had to parse out and prioritize, right? And that's the same thing with the leadership team, with the various leaders across campus. You know, we just did a professional development session, and one of the things we talked about is the importance of actually disagreeing and challenging concepts as we grow and develop. And you know, I think organizations that are baked into universities, for example, you know, having a faculty senate and a university council, you know, these are areas, and you know, arguably too, you know, negotiations with unions and things like that. You know, all of these are spaces where we're supposed to be sharing constantly and, you know, kind of refining, thinking, rethinking.
Right. So how do you measure? And I asked this same question of Chief Bell not too long ago. How do you temper what it is that you might see wrong, but not micromanaging?
You know, I probably veer, I would say my faults are veering in the other direction. I tend not to micromanage because I'm a fiercely independent person and I want people not to micromanage me.
All right.
Yeah, and I think that most faculty have my disposition. You know, we're kind of used to being able to do what we do. I don't tend to micromanage. I'm trying to actually learn to do a little bit more touch points and things like that, you know, in my discussions with folks. You know, one of the things I'm very comfortable, you know, being in the spaces that I've occupied here at EOU, and that is being part of vigorous debate and resolution. And, you know, I think this year with getting the strategy work done, I really see it as a promise to the university. And so I'm driving that pretty hard. I'm really asking a lot of the leadership team and the campus to really deliver on the promise we made to each other when we initiated these strategy teams of creating a better EOU. And I tend to veer towards inspiration and open conversations to get work done. But you do obviously reach a point in some cases where you're like, listen, this has to get done.
Right.
Let's get it done.
Right.
And usually those are more personnel related.
Well, and you found, you know, I've mentioned this example several times. When you own a business, you walk into it, if the garbage can be moved around the corner, you just move it, you know, and whatever. But if you have a flatter organization where where things are happen by discussion a lot, then it's like, are we going to move the garbage can or not? I mean, it gets stalled in this quagmire, you know.
Yeah.
So how do you, as a leader, how do you shift those two worlds?
Yeah, I think a good example of what you're describing is, because, there are very kind of, you can own certain things at a university depending on, like, for example, your classification. So, for example, faculty own the general education curriculum, right? But we have, I think it's time to innovate around our general education curriculum and do a little more. And so what I did was I had a conversation with the Faculty Senate president, talked to the deans about what had happened in the past, talked about the former interim provost about that, and then we talked about how we could get this done. And so, I wrote a letter to the Faculty Senate asking them to consider 3 aspects. I'm proud of Faculty Senate, and I felt really proud of what they did this year. They took my ask seriously and they did the work. And now they've completed a first year and they've figured out what issues they themselves have with the curriculum. And now this year they're setting on a path to do more and focus on what kinds of revisions can be made. And that's kind of a really good example, I think, of how it works at the university. And of course, I make sure I attend the Faculty Senate meetings in case there's questions about, well, what's the inspiration for this and how do you want that done? Because our faculty are really concerned, I think, about the livelihood of the university too, and they want it to be the best. But they're not connected with, for example, parts of the institution like how do we attract transfers, how do we get new admits, right? And that's where I can provide a voice that kind of bridges that gap.
Right.
I got another personal question. Well, it's not like personal, like so you have this job that has a lot of pressure, a lot of weight on your shoulders. How do you blow off steam? Like what does Dr. Ryan do to
Yeah, so I am a big exercise person. So the first thing I do every morning is I work out, except not this morning because you have to take at least one day off a week for your body to rest. But so I think I really do see working out as my personal time. It's the time that I'm most able to just no one else gets to tell me anything, right? Like I listen to a podcast. And then, just last night after I went to the OTEC gathering, I'm taking golf lessons right now. That's really fun.
Are you taking them with Stu or Dana?
Stu.
Stu's. Even Dana will say Stu's the man when it comes to teaching you how to golf.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And then, even, since I started the lessons, getting to go over and kind of practice. I will say yesterday was not a good blowing off steam day. It felt like it created more steam because my swing was so bad yesterday. It was like I didn't have a lesson. And then someone from EOU came, and now they probably don't have faith in my leadership after seeing how bad I was. A lot of issues. But yeah,
That's funny.
things like that are really great for me.
Once you start hitting the golf ball clean, flush, golf becomes so much funner.
When does that happen?
It takes
didn't
a little
happen
while.
yesterday.
It will. It will. But golf becomes so much funner when you have a confidence that you have a good tempo and you're going to hit the ball fairly flush. Golf just elevates so much.
It's funny you say that. Stu did say, have confidence in this shot, Kelly. And then I did, and it was a little better, but it was still embarrassing.
It's all golf is 90% up here.
I think you're right.
It really is because you're holding the club the same, and as long as you have the same tempo and everything, and you're confident about it, it comes. Trust me. I mean, there's reasons why people shoot, in the 60s.
Yeah. Well, I'm still building, quote, muscle memory, he tells me, which is my excuse for
practice makes perfect. That's what they say.
Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being here today. Sure. Is there anything else that you want to give us a pitch?
Yeah.
Tell us why EOU and why higher education.
Yeah. So I will share one thing. When you asked the question earlier about kind of that transition period last year and learning about the area, one thing I really want to share with our community is, Oregon is 44th in the nation in the way that they fund four-year universities. And that creates a really big issue for places like LeGrand, which are at least partially reliant on the university to have a livelihood in activities, for example, all the sports, having the arts, having individuals employed, student workers in their businesses. I'm asking individuals to rethink their thoughts about higher education. Why would we as a state endorse being so bottom dwelling in the way that we fund higher education when we know very well all the great benefits that higher education delivers to communities particularly like ours? And I have found that disappointing, and I don't blame Oregonians for it. Certainly we have a budget, and I'm more mindful than most of the necessities of staying within a budget. But I am asking people to rethink any misconceptions they have about higher ed. Look up the facts. Make sure that you're well versed in what a college education delivers. Eastern Oregon University offers the most affordable 4-year degree in Oregon, and we're really, really proud of it. We've just been named a college of distinction. Only 3 public universities are on that list in Oregon. Let's make sure that we treat EOU as the treasured asset it is and take a second look.
Good. Yeah, and I think that last time one of the things you mentioned is, if you're concerned about shopping local, put EOU on that list.
That's right.
Yeah, and I say that same thing about the hospital.
Yes.
Is that, it's easy for us as local citizens to kind of disregard that. Like, well, they're so big, they're okay, okay, and so we don't treat, we don't give EOU and the hospital the same distinction that we do the personal owned store down the street.
Yeah.
And the principle is the same.
Yeah.
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 So,
it truly is.
Yeah.
It truly is.
All right. Well, hey, thanks so much.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Want to get us out of here?
Yep. On this day, August 29th. See, here's my history part.
Thank God.
Every show. But it's just me looking up a bunch of facts. 708 is the year. Copper coins are minted in Japan for the very first time. 708. 1831, Michael Faraday demonstrates the first electric transformer. 1862, the U.S. Department of the Treasury forms the division now known as the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing to print newly issued paper currency. 1949, the Soviet Union secretly performs its first successful nuclear weapons test in Northeast Kazachstan. I think I said that right. 1997, Netflix is founded by Mark Randolph and Reed Hastings in Scotts Valley, California, as an online DVD rental business. 2005, Hurricane Katrina makes its second and third landfall as a Category 3 hurricane, devastating much of the Gulf Coast from Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle, killing more than 1,800 people and causing over $115 billion in damage. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. 2020, Elon Musk unveils a pig named Gertrude. What was special about that pig?
I don't know this.
It had the Neuralink implanted in it.
Really?
It's a coin-sized computer in her brain. And it was the first animal ever with Neuralink. The number 1 song in America on this day in 1994, Stay by Lisa Loeb and 9 Stories. I remember that song very clearly. That was my freshman year in high school. Quote of the day comes from Rosa Parks. Each person must live their life as a model for others. One more time. Each person must live their life as a model for others. That's
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan, again for being here.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yep.
Don't forget, we have Pendleton football starts at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. And
Pendleton's at 7.
Oh, that's right.
LeGrand's at 6.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pendleton's at 7. LeGrand is at 6.
Yep.
Both of those games will be live on.
If you ain't got anything going on, join me, and I'll talk some smack with you.
Yep. So, LeGrand is playing. Who are they?
Astoria.
Astoria.
Pendleton's playing Scalpoos.
Thank you.
Yep.
All righty. See you soon.